The wind on Vormir has edges, it scrapes, it remembers. He stands on the ridge where the world turns rust and violet, beneath roiling cloud, the soul stone housed in the gaunt bruised sky, like a second sun. He does not visit to pray. He has no gods left. His gauntlet, unfinished bronze, studded with promise, rests at his side. In the hollow between thunder and silence, Thanos listens to a name unspoken. Gamora. The memory comes cleanly. A cliff's black lip. A girl who had learned to laugh despite a world culled to half a graveyard. And the lesson that the universe demands price before it offers order. The stone's warmth is steady in his palm now, its orange fire pulsing slow as a heartbeat. He has not wept since that day. He relearns that absence can be louder than a scream. Vormir gives him nothing back. Fine. He didn't come for comfort. He came to confirm his resolve. The soul stone hums like a vow that can't be unsworn. Destiny, he says at last, and the wind doesn't argue. When Sanctuary 2 tears a doorway through space, it arrives with reverence, a cathedral of black iron and blue engine wash. The fleets arrayed behind it are teeth in the dark, obsidian forge ships, mining crawlers retrofitted as siege platforms, a lattice of leviathans dragging their own gravity wells on chains. He turns his back on Vormir. Set course, he tells the other, who bows so low his forehead almost touches the deck. Where does destiny require we begin, my lord? At the top. Thanos touches the stone once, a casual intimacy that would ash lesser beings. Asgard. Asgard has forgotten what fear feels like. It remembers awe as routine, celebration as duty, war as an old game that always ends with the All-Father's spear sunk into some monster's skull, while auroras dance approval overhead. Tonight, the auroras are different, torn into long sickle arcs, as if someone has drawn blades through the sky. Heimdall is the first to see it. He always is. His sight sweeps through storms and starlight, over Bifrost fractures where he sent 1,000 refugees in 100 battles, down to the palace where Odin casts a long shadow in the Golden Hall. Heimdall's hand tightens around the hilt of Hofund. There are too many signatures, too much intent. He rings the alarm gongs himself, and their deep sound rolls over the city like thunder made of iron. On the balcony beneath the auroras, Odin turns his head, not surprised. His armor is older than the palace, but shines as if new forged. The spear Gungnir hums with power hoarded and earned. A father, a king, a god who has paid blood in advance for centuries. He knows that debts are circular. They always come home. Summon the guard, he tells a page who can't keep his hands from shaking. Heimdall is already there, cloak hammered by wind, eyes burning with starlight. They come with war moons and slave suns, all father. Ours is the bridge, Odin says. We hold. His gaze lifts once to the auroras, old lights doing new shapes. Where is my son? On the outer rings, Heimdall replies, hunting storms. He almost smiles, as he does. Odin's mouth tightens with something that could be pride, could be a prayer he doesn't say aloud. Bring him home. Heimdall lifts the sword, draws a circle across reality, and the Bifrost answers, a roar of color and purpose. But the sky splits in a different angle first. A sleek slab-sided ship shows its teeth at the edge of the world, and vomits blue fire into the outer wards. The Leviathans dive, their ribs showing through translucent hide as they pull gravity like nets. Temple engines cough strange light, and then a new insignia carves itself into the night. A Kree hammer sigil on a dreadnought prow, its voice a banshee long howl through atmosphere. Ronan the Accuser stands on a forward deck, open to vacuum, his hood snapping like a torn page. He does not blink as the first salvo peels the gilded scrollword Fork from Asgard's outer wall. Justice, he thinks, is beautiful when it is simple. He has waited for a cause that fits his hunger. Thanos gave him one the length of a galaxy. Open the rim, Thanos had told him. Let the god bleed. Do not claim the heart. It is mine. So Ronan stands and points his hammer, and the ship obeys. The first wave hits like history, trying to rewrite itself in one punch. Palace pillars crack. Mosaics of past victories rain down in jeweled dust. Valkyries who have not flown in an age take to the air. Long-lost cries tearing old scar tissue open. The Einherjar form ranks that look like songs turned to steel. Odin strides into the storm. Heimdall is already at the Bifrost gate, his voice a command that becomes a bridge. Families first, wounded next. Go, go. He cuts luminous paths too. Vanaheim to Alfheim to distant refugee islets hidden between folded space. Small acts, one mother, one child, one elder clutching a silver reliquary, become a river. He feels each crossing like a heartbeat. He feels each death like a blink he cannot get back. A leviathan rears, its maw a tunnel of bright gut light, aiming to swallow the bridge. Heimdall plants Hofund and splits the beast from chin to crown with a single Bifrost lance. It falls in two soft sick halves into the city and burns with an alien sweetness. As the outer defenses buckle, Sanctuary 2 glides into place like a verdict. Thanos does not rush. Destiny, properly applied, is patient. His commander's report positions. The obsidian giant cull in the breach. Proxima's spear harvesting wings. Corvus gliding along shadow edges to find command spines and cut them. The other simpers approval. Thanos silences him with a glance. Where's Odin? He asks. Not a question so much as a gravitational pull of information. Palace balcony, the other breathes. He awaits you. Good. There are many ways to kill a king. Knives in sleep, poison in wine. Let history suffocate him. Thanos prefers the versions that end argument. He steps down on Asgard's marble, as if arriving in a garden. Heat licks his boots from cracks where molten gold oozes into tongues. He walks through an avenue of broken statues that were once triumphs, now silhouettes. He climbs the last stair while auroras shred themselves above, as if trying to warn something too old to care. Odin stands beneath the sky, Gungnir leveled, the wind smearing rain into his beard. At this distance, he is just a man who has an old sadness and a spear that remembers the shape of suns. Thanos, Odin says. It is greeting and indictment. Old father, Thanos says gently, almost regretful. You have kept a balance, a kind of balance. A tyrant's arithmetic, Odin replies. I chose mercy, and half your mercy was theater, Thanos says. Not cruel, simply accurate. Your daughter rotted, your sons tangled their sins like laurels. You loved your people and walled them from consequence. Your ledger is picturesque. Odin smiles a very small smile, the kind he saves for enemies already weighed. Then why do you tremble, Titan? Thanos looks at his hand. It is steady. I do not tremble. Not your hand, Odin says. His eye lifts, past Thanos, past the ships, past the broken statues, to where the auroras have gone from green to a red-threaded amber. The soul stone pulses on Thanos' knuckles, quiet as breath. Your soul remembers what it paid. Thanos does not answer. Debate is a luxury of survivors. They move in the same breath. Gungnir writes a line of white through air and spears it down like a comet. Thanos catches the force with the naked gauntlet and spreads it across his arm, muscles turning corded, as the soul stone exhales a ghost field that stains the marble orange. The shockwave runs down the palace like a thrown table. Statues collapse. Lightning chooses sides by accident. Odin is not young, but his mastery has weight. He slashes bright geometry into the world, and it answers. His second strike splits into 7. Serpents of force folding to bite at Thanos from behind. The Titan steps through them, carving absence where presence tries to claim him. When the first punch lands, an ugly, human punch, no godlight. Odin's head snaps and he tastes blood. He spits it. It steams when it hits the balcony. He laughs once, a dry bark. Good, Odin says. Efficient, Thanos replies. On the lower terraces, Heimdall sees the duel only as a stitch of light, moving too fast to resolve. He keeps the river moving, refugees into rain, rain into light, light into elsewhere. When he glances left, he sees a Kree dreadnought, attempting to dock its spine into the vault colonnade. Ronan stalks its ribbed hall, eyes bright with holy hunger. Hold the vault, Heimdall bellows to a half squad of Einherjar who hear what he means and not what he says. Beneath them, within the vault, flames whisper behind glass. The eternal flame, a sovereign ember, nothing and everything to dead armies. It moves of its own mind, a small storm contained. In one possible thread of the future, a cleaver ship scuttles down a service artery, a tendril of synth-organic pipework extending like a tongue toward that ember, tasting it, drawing it back up its throat to a prison of vacuum. Eternal flame, theft, on. In another thread, the vault shutters lock and melt as a failsafe, isolating the flame inside a cocoon of Uru laced with Odin's own blood sigils. Eternal flame theft, off. The first will weaken what sleeps and what returns. The second speeds an ending whose name is Ragnarok. For now, the threads braid in tension, deciding themselves in the next breath's violence. On the balcony, Odin faints low, drives Gungnir into the floor, and pulls a geyser of force up under Thanos, like a mountain erupting. The Titan goes to one knee, and then is standing, shrugging the blast off, as it turns the air to glass around him. He steps in and plants his palm, the gauntlet's bare plates ringing like bells, against Odin's chest and pushes. Odin's back hits a pillar. The pillar shivers. A crack lines itself across the ceiling. Through the new skylight, he sees the auroras thinning, exhausted by the work of showing a world how gods die. You were a king, Thanos says. Not you are. Were. They sang you. They will sing you too, Odin says, breathing hard, as warning. Good, Thanos says, and means it. When the end comes, it is not a trick. It is not clever. Thanos closes, eats a spear strike to the ribs, and answers with a hook that would fell a mountain. Odin folds one knee to the marble. Gungnir wobbles and steadies and wobbles again. The old eye looks up through rain and light and distance. Thor, Odin says, not as a cry, as instruction. Be what the word contains. The next strike breaks the balcony's balustrade and sends Odin through it. He falls into thunder, a gold flare, flailing like a meteor. He lands 3 terraces down, impact ringing the city. Heimdall stumbles as if his own ribs were struck. He doesn't allow himself a sound. He sends 200 more souls through the bridge, as if the speed might hold the world together by friction alone. Ronan watches a god fall and feels nothing but a neatness, a click of law catching its notch. He raises his hammer to call another strike and then hears a sound he has never heard before. Something massive, exhaling frost. He looks toward the forged towers. A winter that is not season and not weather rolls across the palace edge. It tastes like the end of crowns. In that moment of cold, somewhere between vault and balcony, the eternal flame chooses its thread. Sanctuary 2 dips its prow by a degree that reads like a nod. Thanos stands over the ruin he has made and does not pose, does not roar victory. He looks at the place where Odin fell and measures what remains to be done, the way a mason measures a foundation. What can bear weight, what must be broken to build something that lasts. He turns his head. Through smoke and rain and the whining fall of far-off engines, he finds Heimdall by the gate, a single bright certainty in the chaos. They regard one another, two keepers of paths. For an instant, Thanos considers crossing the distance. He does not. Some pieces are removed first, others later. Pivot the fleet, he says quiet, as if speaking would disturb the geometry. Once the vault is resolved, disengage. Prepare the Ronin detachment to hold the rim worlds. I have seen what I needed. The other flutters his hands. The Tesseract will be taken, Thanos says, but not from here. He looks once more at the balcony where kings die, then at the river of light where people do not, and makes a decision that will make Earth a battlefield years before it was meant to be. He touches the Soul Stone again, and for a small spiteful second, imagines it pulsing under different skin. He leaves Asgard bleeding and alive, for now. Heimdall watches the ships retract like claws, the spear points of Kree justice fading into high cloud. He does not sheath his sword. He feels the hole in the world where a father used to stand, how the air moves differently without that gravity. He sends the last child he can find, the last bundle of blankets that might be a future, and closes the Bifrost with a slash that cracks stone. The wind in Asgard remembers fear again. It will not forget soon. Far above, the auroras steady into thin, sorrowed veils. Beneath them, on a shattered palace balcony, rain threads through dust. Where Odin's hand struck the floor last, there is a smear of gold that looks like the end of a signature. And in the starless gap between now and what comes next, a black laugh curls on a breath that isn't there yet, carrying the smell of old graves and new crowns. A daughter turning toward home. The sound begins like a hairline crack in a goblet, a bright, brittle singing in the stone that no mortal ear could notice, and every Asgardian bone does. It threads the city's foundations, climbs the palace ribs, and runs up the broken balcony rail, where Odin's hand left the last bright print. The auroras pull taut as silk brought to tearing. A shadow falls that isn't cast by weather. She arrives as if stepping between frames of the same painting. One breath, there is only rain and ruin. The next breath, there is a woman whose black crown grows like antlers from the idea of a night sky. Her armor drinks the gold from the air. Hela inhales and smiles at the taste of home, the way a wolf smiles at the scent of old blood. Father, she says, not really to the corpse that isn't here. At last you stop pretending. The city answers her name, with a groan in the girders. The dead beneath Asgard, heroes stacked like verses in a hymn, roll in their sleep, helmets tipping, fingers twitching toward forgotten hilts. The vault below thrums, and the eternal flame lights itself a little brighter in reflex, like a heartbeat against a cold hand. She looks up into rain and sees the shape of a titan pulling away into the cloud. She tilts her head as if amused that someone killed a king she was planning to kill. Impolite, Hela murmurs, but efficient. A bolt cracks the palace parapet 6 steps to her left. Thor lands inside it. His hair is storm wet, his breath steam. The hammer in his fist makes the rain hesitate. Grief has drawn new planes into his face. Rage has sanded them smooth again. He looks like a man who has remembered the word vow and found it fits his teeth. Hela, he says, and the name is not a greeting. Brother, she says, delighted at the correctness and the wrongness of the word. She studies him the way a collector studies a duplicate piece. You look like him when you think no one sees. Stand down, Thor says, or stand aside. Oh, sweet, Hela says. He thinks language is a weapon. He throws Mjolnir, because the world is simpler when you move first. It leaves his hand with the sound of a promise coming true. A white arc through black rain. The sort of blow that makes mountains blink. Hela turns her wrist and the hammer shivers. For a heartbeat, the stormlight around it dithers like a candle in wind. Thor's eyes widen in that same heartbeat. Memory overlays this moment with the shape of another world, where a father lived long enough to warn him, and then the hammer brings its own answer. It keeps going. Mjolnir slams into Hela's chest, like the backhand of a god older than gods. She slides backward, armor groaning, boots grinding a black gouge into stone, and laughs. When she stops moving, she is upright, and the crack spidering across her cuirass heals like ice closing. Better than the last time I imagined it, she says, honest, pleased. Again. Thor calls Mjolnir back. Rain beads on the Uru like pearls that forgot to fall. This time he doesn't throw. He advances. The hammer sweeps in close work, a craftsman's tool, elbow tight, shoulder locked, arcs that count ribs. Hela answers with blades that splice themselves from darkness as easily as breath fogs. She moves like someone who remembers exactly where every inch of the palace was when it was hers. Their fight is ugly, beautiful only at a distance. At the fifth exchange, she slides under his guard and kisses his cheek with a knife. At the seventh, he uses his body like a wall and drives her into a column so hard the column coughs dust from its father's quarry. At the ninth, she finds his wrist and twists, and for a half second, Mjolnir hangs in air without an owner. He wrenches free and staggers and barks a laugh because pain is clean. The laugh breaks when he sees what's behind her, what she's looking at when she isn't looking at him. The vault door. A disc of hammered Uru, inset with swirls of runes that are as much blood as they are script. It sits in the palace floor like an old oath that doesn't care about the new weather. The eternal flame glows through its seams the way fire shows through a cupped hand. Hint, promise, threat. Stay away, Thor says, already knowing that away means nothing to someone who considers distance an impolite suggestion. Darling, Hela says, and a black spear grows in her hand like a thorn, deciding to be a tree. It's my birthright, she throws. Thor spins the hammer and the spear splits into two halves that scream as they die and then become three halves, which isn't how halves work. And he has to take a step he can't afford to take. She smiles a small, vicious smile and walks toward the vault, as if toward a mirror. Something else moves in the ruined smoke. A new figure, boots whispering on wet stone. A knife flicking in fingers that know knives better than any other truth. Loki steps from shadow as if the shadow is on his side. He looks thin beside Thunder, more line than mass, more grammar than muscle. His eyes are very bright. He was not there when Odin fell. He was in a corridor where a mirror would not meet his gaze. Now he is here because he reads the room quickly when the room is the world. Sister, Loki says, letting it taste in his mouth, seeing if it turns sweet or poison. Liar, Hela says fondly, because some names are function. He inclines his head. Also true. He doesn't draw a blade. He draws words. You want the vault, he says, as if remarking on rain. You want the flame. You want your army back and your crown forward. You want time. She lifts an eyebrow to say, do I? He answers the eyebrow with a smile that says yes. Sanctuary 2 still circles like a vulture that knows which rib will crack first. Loki continues. Lighter, almost conversational. Thanos retreats only because he has decided to begin the next game elsewhere. He can choose to return. He can choose to test if Asgard has 2 deaths in one evening. He glances at Thor with an apology he will never speak aloud, then back at the queen that was and would be. You need 30 days. 90 would be better. The vault seals are not keys, they are negotiations. Father salted them with himself. At Odin's name, Hela's mouth tightens, but her eyes do a different thing. A tiny flicker, not grief, not even anger. Calculation. She touches the vault door with 2 fingers and feels the old man everywhere in it. It would laugh at a battering ram. It would be bored by siege. It would require understanding. Understanding takes time. Buy me days, she says. She does not ask. She authorizes. Loki bows, and for a beat, no one breathes, because it looks like betrayal and salvation in the same motion. Thor looks at him like a cliff looks at a bridge, grudging, uncertain, grateful because there is no other path. How? Hela asks. It is not contempt, it is logistics. I speak their language, Loki says softly. He means Thanos. He means the other. He means the hunger that wears law like armor. I will give them a truce that feels like victory. And what do you require for your mediation? Hela asks, amused. Permission, Loki says, to live after I return. Hela laughs then, a sound with teeth. Fair. Granted, conditionally. Fail and I will kill you last. Last, Loki agrees. So I can watch. He does not step through a door to reach the other. He steps into an angle where light doesn't behave, and opens a channel the way one opens a vein with practice. A bead of cold forms at his temple. The air smells briefly like iron and old cold. The other comes as a shadow with cheekbones. His voice is a wire. Bridgeborn, mischief bred, speak before I grow bored and make you corpse length. Your master wants the Tesseract and a clean corridor to it, Loki says. Asgard is inconveniently awake, but we are not your war. Not tonight. The Titan does not bargain with gnats. Loki lets the insult set like a glass on a table. He doesn't touch it. Then bargain with the clock. You're pivoting toward the Earthstones. Your maw creatures do not eat easily in a city that knows how to fold itself into mirrors. You could spend 6 months gnawing and lose teeth, or you could accept a 90-day stand down from Asgard in exchange for a demonstration of my utility and a channel to a person who understands doors. Silence on the line, but not the bored kind. The other is listening. Your demonstration? He asks. A raid, Loki says. A Kree cache that Ronan has not yet blessed with law. He has passions. Passions leave chinks. There is a list of coordinates in that cache, routes the Kree use to skirt Xandarian patrol grids. They will be useful to you, to me, to the cause of balance. He tastes the word like poison sweetened with honey. You would steal from the accuser. I would steal from anyone, Loki says. Honesty is performance. But this also proves a point, that I can walk between wars and not be trampled. Let it be my trial. If I succeed, you honor a truce with Asgard for 90 days. If I fail, you can feed me to your pet. He glances at Thor, who hasn't taken his eyes off Hela's hands. Either way, you lose nothing now and gain later. Far, far above the city, Sanctuary 2 adjusts a thruster by the width of a thought. The other's voice loses a sliver of contempt. The Titan will allow a pause. 90 days, on one condition. Loki waits. You bring us the cache, and you bring us a map that leads to the Tesseract's future. Not the cube, Loki says lightly. Maps are only true until someone reads them. Then make it true for long enough, the other says, and Loki can hear him smile without seeing it. We will watch you in your trial. We will judge you as we judge our own. Black Order, Loki says, admiring the title's economy. What a doer name. It is not a matter of mood, the other says. It is a matter of gravity. The channel closes like a wound being pinched. Loki exhales and looks at the two people who will decide his death's flavor. Asgard gets 90 days, he says. Use them. Hela studies his face, as if for room to carve. Bring me news I enjoy. She turns back to the vault and the runes blink, as if startled by the intimacy. Thor steps into her view, not as threat, not as brother, not as king, just as a door that will not open. You will not pass, he says. Not today, she agrees. She brushes a speck of dust from his shoulder like a sister fussing. Go, little storm. Save your people. Mend their roofs. Tell them their queen is home. He should strike her for the insult. He should strike her because that is what he knows how to do. He does not. He remembers the sound of Odin's voice when it softened, and how it hardened again when the world needed iron. If you harm them, he says, each word chosen like a stone laid in a wall, I will end you. She steps close enough that he can smell frost and old tombs. Try. She walks away into darkness the way some people step behind curtains, and the darkness is happy to have her. Ronan's dreadnought anchors at the rim of Asgard's sphere, like a judge who prefers a clear view of the defendant. He watches the palace's black crown silhouette against the auroras, and sneers at monarchy the way a pen sneers at a quill. His comm bead clicks. Accuser, the other's voice whispers, silk over wire. You have admirers. Keep the rim worlds in compliance. Asgard declares a truce. You will not break it. You will enforce it. The Titan pivots. Ronan's jaw tightens because obedience feels like another man's law in his mouth. And the cash, he asks, thinking of a secret storehouse he kept off books because everyone needs a private ledger. Compromised, the other says. If you value its contents, defend it. Ronan bares his teeth. I value the lesson I will teach the thief. He gestures, and his hammer hums, cold light crawling up its spine, orders spread like a bruise. Loki's trial begins in a cove of dark between two unimportant stars, where the Kree have buried an unimportant moon in scaffolds. It looks like an abandoned organ, pipes, ribs, a mechanical lung. Blue-armored sentries patrol in loops that trust their own perfection. A drab cargo hauler drifts past on a vector filed as maintenance. Inside it, Loki, 3 Einherjar who owe him favors they won't want to explain, and a glass jar that holds a miniature storm Thor shed like a scab. The jar hums on the floor. Loki touches it as if calming a cat. We are not here, he tells the soldiers. Nothing we do exists later. If you die, do it quietly. One of them grins despite himself. My prince, he says, and remembers calling Loki that as boys in corridors, and then repents the familiarity. The hauler kisses the scaffold with a hiss. Illusions go out like scouts and return with behavior to mimic. The first 3 centuries they pass never know their patrols were improved. Loki's knives never leave their sheaths. His mind does the cutting. He speaks in a Kree quartermaster's voice to a console that only hears correct authority. Doors open, blue light breathing in corridors that smell of metal and pride. The cash room is a place that forgot the difference between vault and chapel. Racks of data rods like organ pipes. Crates stenciled in Kree glyphs that spell expedited sanctity. A central plinth with a cube of black glass that hums lightly when Loki approaches, as if it recognizes cousin technology. There you are, he says to the room, to himself. He unseals nothing with force. He asks a series of questions phrased like compliments, and the locks, flattered, answer. The map he came for isn't a map the way mortals think of maps. It's a stack of probabilities etched in light. It shows where the space stone likes to be when it's not being forced. It shows where it would go if pushed. He can feel the other leaning through space to watch through a keyhole only gods know how to cut. Package it, he tells the Einherjar. They move with reverence they pretend is efficiency. The alarm comes anyway because Ronan is not a fool. A siren that sounds like a doctrine howled by metal. Blue soldiers flood the corridor with faces set to righteous. Loki smiles at the professionalism of it even as he rearranges the corridor's geometry. So the first squad runs into a door that wasn't there, and the second squad discovers their rifles are suddenly very interested in pointing at their own masters. He doesn't kill unless he has to. Hela kills because it feels like correcting grammar. You, a Kree officer, barks, recognizing him despite the deception, because some faces are famous in any language. As Guardian, thief, Loki bows as if to applause. The officer raises a communicator, and Loki flicks 2 fingers. The communicator thinks it is a flute and plays a single, pure note. Everyone blinks. The jar on the floor hums louder. Now, Loki says, and kicks the jar. It breaks like a promise. Thor's bottled storm pours out, happy to be air again. Lightning loves corridors. Thunder fits well in industrial spaces. The scaffolds groan. Kree armor becomes very loud about being conductive. Loki rides the shockwave like a boy sliding a banister he isn't supposed to, cackling, hair lifting in the static. The black glass plinth spits the map into his waiting hand to avoid further indignity. Exit, he says casual, and the hauler obeys, peeled free from the dock by a wind that isn't wind. On the rim of the moonlit, Ronan arrives in time to see a drab maintenance craft skip into dark like a rock skimming a pond. He raises his hammer and sends a beam that would cut a battlecruiser's stem to stern. The beam hits a mirage and disrupts it into a blossom of false shrapnel. He squints at the space where a ship isn't and thinks of the face that smiled while defying him. Loki, he says, committing the word to a list titled Corrective Acts. Back on Asgard, Thor moves among his people as if movement itself can hold a world together. He lifts beams with one hand and children with the other. He helps an old alchemist find the jar of spices that kept his wife's bread tasting like mornings. He lets a man cry on his shoulder until the man shudders once and is done. Each act is a nail in a roof in a storm. Heimdall stands at the Bifrost gate, eyes closed, sight far. He lives, he says, and Thor doesn't ask who, he knows. Will he return? Thor asks. He always does, Heimdall says, neutral, which is the kindest word he can find. In the palace's quiet heart, Hela. Hoppus stands with her palm on the vault door, listening to the old man's sigils murmur. The flame inside glows like an insult she plans to answer. She closes her eyes and pictures an army, remembering it was not finished. 90 days, she says to the door. We will see who wastes them. In the dark between wars, Loki lets the hauler drift engines cold, the stolen map cradled like a lamp. The other's voice comes soft as winter through thin walls. Passable, he says, not elegant, but passable. High praise, Loki says. 90 days, the other confirms. Use them to make yourself inevitable. Loki's smile is crooked and sincere and frightened and thrilled. Oh, I intend to. Far below, on a blue world that hasn't been told it is next, a whispered meeting in a sub-basement ends with a stamped folder passing hands, Hydra's watermark ghosting through thin paper. Insight, someone breathes, a hypothesis for sorting threats that keeps predicting a 50% loss scenario in bold italics no one can explain. Across town, Justin Hammer practices a smirk in a mirror while a row of chrome exolegs seizes and sparks, and he says we'll fix that in post to no one. The universe inhales. 90 days begin. Sanctuary 2 dims its cathedral lights the way a temple shutters after service. Not to rest, but to listen. In the nave of black iron, constellations of status glyphs breathe in blue along the ribs. The war priests of the obsidian stand spaced like punctuation, each a hard stop. The soulstone sits quiet on Thanos' hand, a coal banked under ash. He does not pace, gravity adjusts to him. The crown is gone, the other reports, eyes lowered. The vault lives, the daughter returns. She was always going to, Thanos says. Not disappointment, calculus. We have taken what we needed, time and terror. The truce is not peace, it is permission. A whisper of armor answers. Proxima Midnight stepping into the light, spear planted like a vow. Beside her, Corvus Glaive glides as if his feet dislike work. Giant Cull Obsidian looms in the back like a collapsed mountain, deciding whether to fall again. Ebony Maw does not stand with them. He stands slightly aside, hands folded, head bowed, a monk in a church of knives. Orders, Proxima says. It is hunger with manners. Thanos turns his head toward a moving lattice of stars. The Kree corridors Loki stole, and the statistical map of the Tesseract's desire, layered together like veins revealed by dye. The Space Stone is a creature with instincts. It likes to sit in vaults until someone needs it. It likes men who love gates. It will eventually be on Earth again. Odin's death and Hela's return have rearranged the board. Earth rises early like a moon dragged out of position by a stranger's tide. Earth, Thanos says, and the word is geography and philosophy. Two stones are there, or will be soon, time and space. The reality is close enough to smell. The power can be reached, the soul is bought. His thumb brushes the orange face, a priest touching a relic. We move quietly first. We take their doors before we knock. Ebony Maw bows so deep, his spine becomes an opinion. I will speak in the language of thresholds, he murmurs. Kamartaj is a bell that thinks it rings itself. I will teach it humility. Take Kull, Thanos says. A hammer to hush the hymn while you work. Kull's smile is a landslide. Corvus's laugh is a thin, mean wire. Proxima, Thanos continues without looking, because he does not have to look to move pieces correctly. Find the sharpest edges of Earth's defenders. Break them where they do not expect to be struck. Make them choose between streets and sanctuaries. She inclines her head. I will draw their best into alleys that hate them. Corvus, Thanos says. My lord? Rake the shadows, pull their leaders by their heels. They will have agents who think secrecy is armor. Make secrecy their drowning. Corvus's grin shows teeth and subtraction. I will harvest their command spines. And Ronan? The other ventures, careful because the Kree's zeal makes him unpredictable and necessary in equal measure. Thanos finally looks up toward a projection of the Rimworld chain. Small spheres glowing, some already dimmed, others bright with trouble. The accuser enforces our law on Asgard's client worlds. He will keep the truce honest by making it hurt. He wants a crusade, give him a ledger. Let him learn patience as penance. If Ronan hears it as insult, he isn't present to protest. On his dreadnought's forward deck, he is already pronouncing sentence on a world that pledged fealty to Asgard in a softer century, and thought distance would save it. The hammer comes down in blasts of blue jurisprudence. He names it compliance, and holds the word in his teeth, until it tastes like victory. Maw's voice laces through thought. The Loki, then? Your bridge-bred cipher. Thanos does not smile often. The movement now is winter. He believes he negotiated a pause. The Titan's gaze slides back to the living map. But he asked for it in the only way he knows. By proving he can be useful, use him, He knows how doors feel when they want to open, and he will ruin himself to be seen. The other nods pleased to be included in the ruin of a god. Quietly, Thanos says, as if reminding the universe to lower its voice. We are not at crescendo. We are at tempo. He looks once more at the Soul Stone. It does not warm beneath his regard. It is not a pet. He lets himself say the name that has not been spoken aloud since Vormir. Gamora. The word goes nowhere, and that is the point. He closes his hand. Make ready, he says, and Sanctuary 2 tilts like a blade, deciding which throat fits best. On Asgard, the rain stops because it runs out of courage. Dawn shows itself without enthusiasm. What was gold looks like bone. Thor stands at the highest edge where the balcony broke, hair hanging in heavy ropes, Mjolnir dangling, like a promise he is not ready to make. He has slept not at all, which is not the same as being awake. Below him, tarps blooming over broken roofs, smoke risen and captured by nets of light, the hum of field kitchens cobbled from ship hearts. His people move as if remembering choreography learned in childhood, a dance called Survive. Heimdall joins him without announcing it, because men who have stood inside storms together do not require ceremony. 90 days, Heimdall says, the words dry and unsalted. Can she be trusted? Thor asks, meaning Hela, meaning Loki, meaning the truce, meaning the world. Heimdall's mouth makes something like a smile. Trust is a bridge, not a fact. Walk it and test each board. Jump only if you must. Thor exhales, a long grind. I should be hunting the Titan. You should be holding your people, Heimdall says. One will make you feel like a god. The other will make you a king. Thor closes his eyes. When he opens them, the view is the same, but the frame is different. Then we build. On Earth, Midnight keeps two different promises in two different rooms. In a sub-basement where shield-stamped paint doesn't cover the Cold War green beneath, a handful of analysts and a man who should have retired pass a mouse between them and try not to notice their coffee is shaking. A monitor shows code like rain. The title bar reads Insight Alpha. Once upon a later, it will become Project Insight, orbital gunboat doctrine wearing calculus as a mask. Right now, it is a hypothesis hungry for data. This predictive cluster, a junior says. Tapping the screen with a pen he shouldn't touch the screen with. It keeps converging on a catastrophic stability event. 50% attrition, global. 50, the retiree repeats. The way a pastor repeats a verse to see if it rhymes with the next. He doesn't like the taste of the number. From what vector? The junior gestures helplessly. It's like the system wants to solve a problem by halving itself. A loss scenario yields long-term equilibrium across most components, including he swallows, including us. A woman whose badge says nothing pushes hair behind her ear and squints at the math like it insulted her mother. The model needs constraint, she says. If you let it optimize with no ethics, it will pick cruelty every time and call it neat. Neat, the retiree repeats again, and this time the word sounds like a rope. Flag it, deep. Use snowy language if you have to. I want this tagged as a scenario we never allow the real system to choose. He doesn't believe the note will save the world. He writes it anyway, in case there is a world later where someone reads. As the cursor blinks, somewhere 3 levels up, a man in a suit that isn't quite S.H.I.E.L.D. and isn't quite anything else, takes a copy of the draft and files it in a folder with a sigil, stamped, faint and cold. A skull under winter. Midnight's other promise happens under hot light. Justin Hammer stares at himself in a pane of glass because mirrors make him look too hungry. The stage is a box still being built, scaffolds and gaffer tape, cables like spilled innocence. Behind him, a row of exo frames that are almost drones, almost suits, almost not embarrassing. One twitches, one smokes, one makes a sound like a goat being stepped on, and then decides not to be on fire. An intern claps once by reflex and then looks embarrassed. "We'll fix that in post," Hammer says, smiling like a shark who thinks teeth are a personality. He widens his stance and lifts his chin and tries to find the angle that makes him look like a savior. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, hands opening like a televangelist, inviting money to be saved. In a world uncertain about genius, stability, and he glances at his wrist cheat. "The security of a post-Stark landscape, I'm here to tell you. You don't need a maverick, you need a manufacturer." He stops. He shakes his head. He tries again. Tony Stark was a comet. Beautiful, sure, but you can't run a grid off a firework. What America needs is infrastructure. A drone behind him judders and spits a handful of sparks like a cat coughing up a glitter hairball. Hammer keeps smiling. Reliability, accountability, patriotism built on purchase orders. I'm Justin Hammer, and I'm here to... The drone takes a step and sits down harder than dignity usually allows. Hammer's eye does a tiny panic dance and returns to center. To deliver. And if these are prototypes, that's because innovation happens in the open. He points at the smoking rig like a magician with a volunteer. We fail forward. Someone offstage whispers, "Is it supposed to smell like toasted pennies?" Another voice. "Do not inhale that." Hammer keeps talking. He is very good at that. Somewhere over the Atlantic, a ship as black as a claws and as big as a cathedral slants south without asking permission. 90 days begin to vanish in the way time always does. Politely, efficiently, with a smile. The multiverse just expanded. Miss the Part Productions is now on Ko-fi, our new hub where you can help build universes. Pay what you want for custom what-if stories, fund new series, collect signed storylines, and unlock exclusive rewards. Every coffee fuels the multiverse.